Welcome to Houston, where we're at Broadband Communities for a live, in-person party time episode of Connect This. This is going to be a fun episode. We have 4 stellar guests, 3 of whom are not me, and 3 of whom are chairs of this very conference. So let me start with introducing Heather Gold with Mirrors. Welcome. You have a microphone, right? Does it work?
He just welcomed you. Say thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. I can't wait to get this party rolling.
We're also working on the mic levels. They're going to improve throughout, and maybe I'll be consistent and not drive our tech crazy and where I hold it. We also have Bob Knight, and Bob is making his first show, I think, on Connect This, right?
And this is our second time sitting down with microphones today. We were on a panel earlier where I might have accused you of Sharon stoning the audience.
Yes, leading me to a panic because I may or may not have recently been at an event where halfway through it, someone said, "Your fly's down." So I was thinking, I have a malfunction. I'm having a wardrobe malfunction here in front of this audience. Heather's been on multiple times. Bob is first time. And then Kim McKinley is our returning champion. Kim McKinley with UTOPIA Fiber. I didn't even say who Bob was, but I assume everyone knows who Bob Knight is.
But you should say it anyway, just for branding purposes, as my team is like.
Bob Knight is this guy back here, all the Harrison Edwards stuff.
That's us.
That's Bob Knight.
Oh, is it my turn now?
It's your turn now.
Hurry up, you're running out of time.
Okay, thank you. For once, I really want Doug and Travis back instead of these 2 lovely guests besides me.
We wouldn't mind Doug.
We do have a chair. So we have a chair here for Travis or Doug, but we're gonna make sure other people sit in it. So we have several different topics to talk about tonight, but we are going to demand that some people who are here in the audience come up to join us for a topic here or there as we're going through. But we are going to talk about what we're doing here briefly, what's going on with BBC, the Broadband Communities event, and we're going to talk about the broadband definition, talk a little bit about the FCC. We're going to talk about, Heather, what was it you wanted to talk about? You brought up speeds. What about speeds?
You know, whether 25 and 3 ever should have been legit. And
right.
then what is 120 mean, right?
Yes.
In this day.
Right. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about other issues with municipal broadband, which I'm just throwing Yellowstone fiber into that. Do you chafe when I say municipal fiber, Yellowstone broadband?
Chafed, maybe not, but irks me a little, maybe a little, a tad, a skosh, if you will.
I feel like we want to get an update on it, though. It's an interesting project. Want to talk about that?
It is a very interesting project.
We're going to talk about American Association of Public Broadband, which is an important date. It's a very exciting date.
Exciting.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about all those topics and then other things that people bring up. So feel free to suggest topics in the chat as well as here. And I want to start by just noting that we're at Broadband Communities. This was the first real conference I ever went to when I got into this industry about 15 years ago, probably my first Broadband Communities. I think I've missed one since then. You all are broadband co-chairs of it. You just want to do a quick pitch for people as to what makes Broadband Communities special?
But we need to talk about, as co-chairs, Bob, did you not get the orange memo? I mean, I'm just trying to say.
I agree. What the hell is wrong with you?
I'm like the Oreo between 2 orange Julius's here.
I think what we have to say about Broadband Communities, and Chris, is that it has for years been the forum where small local communities could come and learn about what they need to do to be ready for broadband deployment. I mean, it's like a safe place. It's, they're not going to be overwhelmed by large incumbents, and they're going to be able to talk to other people like themselves in the hallways. And it really has been a unique experience over the years.
And it's been fun. And this is where things happen. The Coalition for Local Internet Choice was born here. Given the fact that it is a 1-year anniversary of the American Association for Public Broadband.
You just announced our announcement without giving us a chance to announce our announcement.
What are we announcing?
We haven't announced it.
Yeah, it was the 1-year anniversary of
We announced it like 20 minutes ago. That's where I learned that. I would have known that otherwise.
I know, but not on the show.
Well, we also have another announcement later this week. We're going to announce our first executive director. So we're pretty excited about that, too. So we'll announce that, I think, Wednesday. There's a press conference here, and so we'll find out.
Right here?
Right here.
These chairs.
in the very media studio,
Making history.
making history,
The
warming it
other-
up.
Heather, you told me that you wanted to talk about how much money we think is going to the big cable and telephone companies.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. So we're going to
Thank
talk
you
about
for
that.
reminding me.
Yeah.
So here's a topic that I want to throw out to the.
Oh, we're going to start with that? You taking over?
Yeah.
Okay. I like it. Go for it.
Is my thing working?
Yeah, it's not
okay.
amplifying in the room. I think it's more for
Oh,
the show.
Okay, so here's a topic I think that is very important right now. What percentage of the government funding is actually going to go to communities and small local competitors? I heard today one company positing that they thought 75% of the money was going to go to small communities and new entrants. And I was like, really?
Dreamland.
Yeah, I am worried about that. I'd love to see that, especially given how the large incumbents mismanage the money they've been given for the last 50 years. But I'm also very skeptical about the rules that are in place for all this government funding and whether small entities are going to be able to comply. So I'd like to just throw that out to my fellow panelists.
I feel like that's a gentle toss. I want to see more energy coming from you. And I don't know, do we need to like
I
spike?
feel like Angela has some more wine for Heather in the back here.
Well,
So
there's-
I feel
there's a
like, come on,
selection.
yes, we've got this.
I just don't want to say anything.
The Napa Valley dressed in orange.
I feel
right
like
over
she's
here.
a white kind of girl,
Yeah,
Angela,
but
a white
it
kind of
could
girl.
be Chardonnay, so no.
Whatever they serve at the
All right.
country
So
club will
you had
be
a
fine.
reaction, Kim.
I think Heather,
take the
if you are really that astonished that 70 people are saying,
No, I was astonished that somebody said it.
well, I mean, there's delusional people everywhere. That I think that you're going to see it go in reverse. 75% of the money will go to the big incumbents. And I'm going to say something, and that my boss is in the room, and I probably shouldn't say, but there is some people who would say that communities aren't ready for some of this money that's coming down, and that big incumbents are more shovel ready or ready to go. And
Can we-
I'm not saying that's the way it
Would
should
anyone
be.
come up and defend that in that chair? Does anyone want to
Anyone
wanna defend that communities aren't ready for the money?
Come on, Timmerman. Let's hear it.
See, while he's
Don't
walking
knock
up,
over the
I
wine,
would
though.
posit to say that I
Says-
think 60 to 70% of the money will not go towards its
It's on.
intended purpose. And I think it will just this, whether it goes to an incumbent or whether it goes to planning on top of planning on top of planning. I think, not to be negative, but I just don't think it's really the
So you
moonshot
don't think it's
that we
going to
want.
be deployment into, you don't think it's going to be invested in infrastructure. You think it's going to be twiddled away.
I think there's going to be studies after studies after studies after.
No, I
consulting after
disagree. But I
consulting.
just want to say Travis is not in the chat room, but he's saying 100% is going to the big companies.
I'm with him on that. I think it's going to be the next.
You're supposed to
FirstNet.
argue with me about this.
Like FirstNet, I remember meeting with the FCC, and it's like, this is going to be great. We're going to have regional companies, and the local ones are going to be involved, and we're going to have all this collaboration. Everybody's going to be following these standards. And they come out and went award the whole thing to AT&T, cut everybody out, and it was just like, that's what they do. And I think this is going to end up with the same thing.
I feel dumber every time the term FirstNet comes up because I still don't understand what was going on with that, what the intent was, how they thought it was going to work, like how AT&T got it. I'm mystified. Roger broke it. Thought you
Technical
were
difficulties.
Mr. Engineer, Roger.
Please stand by.
No, but this is it. So
This
this,
one will be
yeah.
regional, but I think you'll see the big regional incumbents getting the lion's share of the money. I don't see it coming out anymore.
Well, okay, so I'm going to ask the panel, and I'm going to take over your position here. What can communities do to be in this shape to get the money?
Well, I think first you have to have an orange dress, and then once you have that established firmly,
It's
Uh,
a skirt.
uh,
It is called a skirt.
or shoes or orange
I think
shoes.
those are pink, Heather.
Wait a minute. These are red. Is orange supposed to go with red?
Those are toenails. Those are not attire.
So it all comes down to shovel-ready projects, right? Do you have your studies ready? Do you have your construction company lined up and ready to go? Do you have a good idea of what the costs are? Because frankly, if you don't get the bead, you can still find a pathway forward. And I think the most important thing that communities can really do and should consider is that, yeah, go for the bead, but have a plan B and a plan C in place because you have to get it built no matter what.
And thank you for the pitch of my panel tomorrow. If you're at Broadband Communities, it's what if you don't get the bead money
Oh.
with, yeah, see,
Oh.
exactly.
But you guys, we saw this exactly after the Google big
1,100 cities applied.
Right, 1,100, thank you. 1,100 cities applied and only one city won at that time. And everyone else, though, a lot of them figured out how to get their act together and go for other funding without Google when they didn't win. And I think you're right, Kim. I think that's what people are going to see, because I would be depressed. I got to tell you, Roger, if it all went to large local incumbents. I mean, they managed to screw it up for so long that, you know, they had less oversight of that USF money than a welfare mother on you know, Medicare. I mean, it was just ridiculous. But
Yeah, but they're the ones that wrote the rules, essentially, right? You have the lobbyists who say, hey, this is where our broadband standards are. And if we said broadband was a gigabit, well, suddenly you have opportunity for new people to come in and find density and populations for feasible project. But you keep that standard intentionally low. The only thing that qualifies for BEAD money are these little tiny pockets in incredibly rural areas where it only is practical to apply for and use that money if it's just an appendage to an existing
Right.
operator.
But this is what Congress wanted, right? I mean, this is what Congress wanted. But I think what we brought you up here is a question that I find very interesting, which is, let's assume for a second that we had our way and we had tens of billions of dollars available to try to solve problems in areas where there is a company right now telling the FCC that it is advertising fast speeds in areas. So that's what we're frustrated with, is all these areas where the existing providers are not getting the job done. And I feel like you're saying, and you deal with a lot of local governments, what I feel too, which is a strong majority of local governments right now have no capacity on this issue, and they are intentionally refusing to build capacity on this issue.
I don't think it's that bad. I think a lot of local entities really do want to control their destiny on the broadband issue.
Why do you say that? But what makes you say that?
Well, we were in Columbus with FBA in the fall.
Correct.
We heard from their regional government people how for his entities in rural southeastern Ohio, the part that dips
The
into
Appalachians.
Appalachia, they had no interest in having an incumbent own their infrastructure. They didn't say they wanted to run it. They didn't say they wanted to run it, but they wanted to own it so that they could control their destiny. And even at this event today, before we started filming at the conference, we've heard from other incumbents that want to own their own infrastructure. They may not want to run it, but then they'll look for consulting entities, subsidiaries like yours, Roger and Kim, to do it for them, or a private entity. But I think there's still a lot of communities that are feeling torn by their experiences with the large incumbents.
So-
that will
so-
look for an option.
But like you can feel a lot of things, but if you act on a lot of things is a totally different statement. And I think it's easy to say, I feel this way. I feel a lot of ways, Heather, but what do I act on? I
No,
think
but Heather's.
But hang on, but I have a case in point, right? This is exactly what's happening in my community where I'm a municipal official and where I've lived for 15 years, which is.
Is it a leafy suburb?
It is a leafy suburb of New York City. Yes, Richfield, Connecticut, beautiful Richfield. Okay, so we are exploring a municipally owned fiber network, and I'll tell you why. We actually have some of the best cable service. About 15% of the community is unserved. It's on legacy copper with Frontier, and then 85% you can make the argument that it's underserved. We have some of the best, Comcast service probably in the country. You can get 400 down, but like 15 up. Now they've gamed the system a little bit because since the BEAD rules were announced, 100 over 20, they changed the downstream, so you're getting less downstream and more upstream to get it over that 20 megabits upstream threshold. So all of a sudden, a community which was largely underserved, which would have qualified for some of the BEAD, now all of a sudden, is locked out. So now we're looking
Right,
at,
but
okay,
that's the intention. I mean,
that's the intention. But our community, still with some of the best cable service in the country, wants 93% of the community wants that fiber
Right,
service.
but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think Heather's right. The numbers are growing. I just feel like it's still a majority who are not ready to take action on this.
But being not ready is a different question, because you can get these communities ready. And for an example, and I'm not saying it's dispositive, but the state of Colorado has implemented a community certification program whereby you have to go through and it shows if you're
Shovel ready.
shovel ready. Blah, blah, blah. I know. Don't give me any more wine, Angela. But
But
it
Heather,
show-
let me
and then
ask you the
you're-
question.
I didn't do it.
Oh.
We still have electricity. We just lost illumination.
Darkness falls throughout the land. Where's my wallet?
Not the first time people have turned the lights off while I'm presenting.
Wow.
I think it's the fourth.
But
I feel like
this point.
someone's leaning on the switch right now.
what
Yeah.
is going on?
What's happening?
It's Twilight Zone.
I don't know. I feel like people are giving us more thumbs up now.
This is funny.
This is like you're
someone in another room.
have you ever been on a sailboat and you're just like rocking back and forth, overcorrecting? All right, I want to give Roger a chance to say any last thing you want to say, and
Get
then
out and open this chair.
Yeah.
And everyone open up their cell phones and just shine it on their faces just in case.
It's Tiger Woods finishing the Masters.
So I just want to leave an example. What we've seen, and a little bit to your point, Heather, is I think you have governmental entities wanting to retain some control or ownership, even if they don't want to jump in and be a broadband provider. We've got some examples like in Utah where the state would appropriate money. They'd say, we have these high schools in rural areas.
come on, keep going. The sound's going.
Keep going, Roger. You're on a roll.
And they'd appropriate millions of dollars. Well, then in the process of things, there'd be an RFP and some provider would win the business and they would use these millions of dollars to connect to that high school. And then the 5-year contract is up and they say, okay, now we're going to renew this on a new 5-year. And they would still charge them millions. And the state's like, wait a second, we already built this. It's like, no, you didn't build this. Some private provider built it with public money and they own it and they're holding you hostage with that publicly funded
Right.
infrastructure.
Right.
Well, before I was so rudely interrupted by this one here.
You're welcome.
You know, that's precisely the reason why our community wants to own the fiber. We want to make sure that it gets to every street, every corner, and make it accessible to everyone who wants to take it. That's critically important to us from an economic development standpoint, from a community development standpoint. But, you know, I've been arguing with the town because the town's like, well, you know, we own the sewer system and we operate it and we're doing a great job. I'm like, yeah, you don't want to be out there, you know, in a hurricane. We get a lot of those, you know, we're 80% aerial, you know, handling restoration. And if you've ever been to our town trying to get a dump permit or for the recycling center, you know, competitive customer service is not the strong suit of local municipal government. So that's where, you know, the private sector comes in. So I'm a big proponent of
Excuse
you know,
me.
publicly owned
My
infrastructure.
customer service is really well rated. So, and you're talking, and I work for a municipal government.
Right. But what I'm saying is that's a culture that you guys at Utopia have instilled. I don't know that we necessarily have that in
And
town.
That
most
culture is
municipal
really important.
services aren't competitive, right?
Right.
Correct.
They
Right.
just people have to
That-
use the city
And
services.
don't
whether
you
or
think
not.
that's the big scary thing for most municipal?
Yeah, they're getting into something that's
it's
historically been
competitive,
competitive.
But and you've seen that
it
with
can
the,
be done well. to
Right.
Credit.
No, I mean, I
nothing.
get what you're
No,
saying,
but
guys, but like, I think that there's a point where we drink our own Kool-Aid too much and then we're negative on the other side too much on this whole topic, right?
No.
Because I think there's cities who don't want to get into this.
exactly, but they should still have a voice in what happens to the infrastructure investment. Yes, God, I am being emphatic. They still should have a voice in the infrastructure investment that goes into their community.
I absolutely agree with you.
We're
but I
gonna
think
move
we
on,
have to
though.
be realistic on this whole spectrum.
Are
as
we
well.
though, Chris?
One of us is. I'm gonna cut some mics here. We had a couple of comments that I just wanted to note. Pennsylvania burned through $200 billion of AT&T. That's Ruben. I think it's a combination figure of the amount that was overcharged by phone companies in return for promises to build fiber out everywhere, which they did not do. And a question of what is the consequence of an ISP not delivering? This is something we've talked about before, and I'm curious in particular for Bob and Heather, Doug thinks that what we'll see is a bunch of these big companies getting this money and then building the networks out, not defaulting, but then demanding that they will have to have operating support to continue supporting them. I'm not talking about rural Wyoming here, where there's legit concerns. I'm not talking about a tribal nation where there's legit like operational concerns. I'm talking about places where an NTCA member would have no problem making it work without continuing subsidy, but where Frontier says, oh, I need a payment or else I'm shutting the network off.
Well, don't you feel there are sufficient safeguards in the BEAD program?
I do not feel that there are sufficient safeguards.
But playing devil's advocate, larger companies have different cost structures. They have different labor structures. They can't pivot as quickly as
they write very
smaller
big checks to
companies.
their executives. I agree.
But what I'm saying is,
That's
sometimes you have organized labor, in the mix too. So there are different pressures, and this is in no defense of
Sounds like it might be.
Look, we have failing copper infrastructure in our community that really needs to be replaced. So
But Bob,
I'm a
ask a
big critic.
question.
Yes, Kim.
Okay. Yes, you're
Yes,
welcome.
Kim.
But so you are given capital to build the network and you don't have enough money coming in from reoccurring revenue to operate the network. Is that what and you feel that we should give subsidies to them still?
I'm just playing devil's advocate to a point. I agree that it's BS, and the same failed policies that got us into the national broadband mess are not going to be the same policies that get us out of the mess.
So maybe this is something we should all be advocating for as the states start and implement their rules, that there be some sort of fallback if a company fails to effectively utilize because remember, it's the states that are giving out the money. The feds are just giving the block grant to the state. So maybe we should be advocating with the states that there be some sort of fallback if the company fails to live up to its
But
operating.
what does live up to its obligation mean?
Well, if they say they need more money when the condition was just capital funds.
I think this is something we're not going to resolve here, but I'll just note that the states are probably going to turn to the lobbyists from the big cable and telephone companies and ask them how to implement what you're suggesting.
Well, and that's exactly the point, right? While we're sitting here debating this, state broadband directors are walking down the street. They stop to stare into a store window, and 3 lobbyists smack into them from behind. I'm not kidding. I was at we were at one of the regional fiber connects. Kim's an FBA board member. Without saying
Yeah,
that, right?
full
But
disclosure.
Full disclosure, right? And I was on with the Alabama broadband director.
I was not a board member
You were
at this
not there.
time.
And the lady who runs Alabama's cable just sitting right there at the table, and they were the best of friends. And I'm not saying that there's any improprieties going on or anything. And both very smart, very talented, very nice people. But there is such a cozy relationship, and this relationship is deep, and it's been around a long time. And as we're sitting here trying to find a solution,
No, I'll tell you.
They're like miles ahead of us.
The Bell South was co-located in Montgomery, Alabama, with the Alabama hearing room for PUC events. As someone who was show caused in Alabama at one point in her life.
So, Alexander Graham Bell, let's talk more about it.
All right, I want to see if anyone else in the audience wants to jump up and propose a topic.
Save us, members.
I'm curious if a certain
Sinead,
someone.
do you have any questions in the back?
I'm actually curious if someone would be interested in coming up to talking about a specific city and some of the challenges they've faced, but understand if that's not practical for where you are right now. That's cool.
Yeah, Sean, you can come up. Come on, Sean. Let's see what you got. What do you got?
Why don't we just turn
Give
this
Sean
into
come
like
up?
Oprah's favorite things?
Well,
Like,
I want to talk.
you get a network. You get a network.
Let's-
Everybody gets a
So,
network.
let's bring Sean up. Sean is been on shows previously. He's on our team at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance.
One of the smartest guys in the industry too.
Oh man.
Oh,
It's not a high bar. It's not a high
That's
bar.
what his references told me. One of his references was like, "I've worked in the Capitol Hill. I've done all this stuff." Sean is the smartest person I've ever met. So
He's up there. Good dude.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard when Bob talks about when he talked to the White House? Because he likes to tell that story a lot.
Oh,
too.
for Christ's sake.
whatever he did, I'm sure it worked well. I wanna talk about the GAO. and a recent report that came out, the General Accounting Office, and they just came out with a report about the FCC and the standard for broadband. We don't really need to talk about the report. I'm probably the only one who read it because I did it on the airplane in preparation for this. But
Did you get the upgrade?
I did not. Well, I got upgrade. For me, an upgrade is a Comfort Plus. So,
The hard knock life, buddy.
so the FCC back when Gigi was advising Tom Wheeler, the chair of the FCC, they increased the definition of broadband because it was 2015. They used data from 2014 and earlier and recognized that the previous definition was woefully inaccurate. Our current chair circulated a petition or circulated a draft to look at that issue last year, and then it disappeared. And the FCC has not considered or has not successfully raised the speed definition, which has led to all of the different departments of the federal government and the states basically being like, we're going to make up our own definition because the FCC doesn't matter anymore. So I'm just curious if I mean, Heather had said that you want to talk about the speeds.
I mean, I think it's just, can I swear on this show?
Light swears, not hardcore swears.
It's crap.
Yeah.
I mean, is that okay?
Is that
Yeah.
a swear?
I don't know.
I tell my son it is.
I mean, come on, guys. After going through the pandemic, somebody honestly thinks 25.3, even before the pandemic, was adequate. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm like stunned that they can't just accept 100 over 100 at least as the starting, as the,
So you would
Table
propose a
stakes.
definition that would suggest the vast majority of the country does not have broadband access.
Correct,
I mean, not
correct.
vast majority, 60% of the country, I think,
Correct.
roughly.
and I think we get a little hung up on the speed thing because if it's fiber, I know I'm the fiber maven, but if it's fiber, you can infinitesimally increase the speed. I mean, that's the whole deal. They get hung up on the speeds because they're trying to be technology neutral, which is also crap.
Right.
Because it's not technology neutrality is not going to get people where we need to be in terms of growth of adequate broadband.
So do you think the minimum should be 100 over 100?
Yes,
So what would you say ideally it would be?
I think if it's fiber, then you can just keep putting more and more electronics on it and pump it up. But if
So
you say 100 over 100, they're going to have to deploy fiber. That's sort of the way where I am.
Sean, former syndicated columnist, thinking about this stuff, someone who's been deeply disappointed at government, but hopeful about government solving things for people who aren't familiar with their background. What do you think about when we're talking about all this stuff?
I think I think Doug Dawson is who I think really articulated this, which is that so the disconnect, I think, from a public point of view, in terms of really applying like public pressure, is that nobody that isn't really into this knows what speeds mean.
Right.
So people don't really care about speeds. They care about
So-
reliability and they want everything.
Right there.
They want everything to
True.
work without there being
It just
outages
works.
and
It just works.
It just works.
It's almost like we should have some kind of expert agency which would periodically review these things, having a deep understanding of the issues, and then make those decisions for us.
And I mean, I hate to channel Blair Levin. I love Blair. I
Good, because you know that I'm a big fan.
I know. But Blair always
Do we have to like everything you like to be
No.
a big fan?
I'm just
But
ready to
Chris
jump.
and I-
I'll fight anyone
so-
on this one.
But Chris, Blair used to say, you need to do the politics of abundance. And does anybody ever ask, do I have enough electricity in my
Right.
home?
Exactly.
Or the water. Do you have a big enough water pipe into your home to do what you need to do?
Heather,
no one asks
in
that.
my house, it's do you have enough pairs of shoes?
Well, I can empathize. I can relate.
Not helpful. Really not
Okay,
helpful.
But
sorry.
broadband should just be like electricity and water. You should just turn it on and you have what you need.
I mean, literally, we would not be having this conversation, 100 years ago. Could you imagine sitting here and saying, well, electricity is the wave of the future, but you had some well-funded candle lobby saying, you just light more candles and more
Right.
matches and it'll
No,
take care of it. It's enough
but-
light what you need.
But
we
that's
had
the
that
point,
with
though.
with the uprise of the car and the horse and
But
buggy.
I think this is a very good point. Like there was no dishwasher industry to be like, we need more electricity.
Right.
Right. Like it took a while.
Right.
Right.
You know, and
I want to meet a dishwasher lobbyist.
oh, there's got to be. Right? I'm from the American Appliance Association, and we're
Yeah, but no, I think it comes down to the way you talk about it. I've heard you talk about it a lot like this, Chris, which is because I think the speed stuff gets into like, all right, well, how much does an individual need? But the way to think about it is, in like as a household, and that you build these things the way we do our roads and our highways. It's like,
Right.
You build a highway for maximum traffic, for it to be able to handle rush hour traffic, maximum capacity. And nobody says it's a waste that we have these highways at 2:00 in the morning because there's only 5 cars on the road.
exactly
Right.
exactly.
I think that's a little bit of the complication, right? We don't know what happens behind when somebody builds a highway, Sean, right? But then we expect people to understand all the technicalities of what happens behind broadband. And I think that's unfair to the average consumer because they don't know.
But they don't need to know. Like this is the part that I get at, which is great setting me up. This is how you deal with a boss when you're on a public panel, which is that local governments take that on. Local governments have refused to build up this expertise, right? I mean, it is, I hear from people who are like, well, the pandemic showed that it's not luxury anymore. I couldn't find anyone in 2018 who would say this was a luxury, right?
Exactly.
But
Not
let
publicly.
me challenge this. Nobody as a city official knows how you build a road and understand the capacity.
They have an entire Department of Public Works that has figured
But
it out.
they do. But I mean, but the city council, and then we expect city council members to understand about broadband, right? And we expect them to, when they make the decision, to make them. Because as Roger, my boss, I'll give him some credit right now, said earlier, is nobody has a city broadband office, right? And that's something
Well,
that you
let's
need.
go talk to the city council members of Sandy, Oregon, where there was one that got it, right? Let's talk to, I don't know if there's a single one that sort of gets it in Fairlawn, Ohio, like Wilson, North Carolina. They have teams of experts that they trust to do this. And
How do you know who to trust in this industry when everybody's coming in and saying, I have the expertise, I know better than you?
we go by pairs of shoes and size of glasses.
That's fair enough. I appreciate this now. You can shut me up. Go ahead,
We have a
Bob.
question from the audience.
Yeah.
Laura Lewis.
Can you give her the mic, Sean?
Yes.
Come
Thank
on,
you.
Laura. You can
Come on, Laura.
Here. It's
You're
okay.
close enough.
Thank you.
You
Thank
have
you,
some
Sean.
orange stripes. You have some orange stripes.
Okay, great, orange stripes. So I think local governments don't know where to start. And I would state that every.
And Laura, where do you work from? So we could just know.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Laura Lewis, Lewis Young, Robertson, Birmingham. I do finance for local governments, including a lot of fiber projects. Every successful local government fiber project has had a champion. Period. End of sentence. Give me the project. I can tell you who the champion was because they don't have a department. So there's got to be someone who's passionate about it, that's willing to find the solutions because they're out there. They need to know who to ask and at least start asking the questions. Oh, I don't know. Here are 4 people. Call them, right? So that's my.
But I mean, from your perspective, like I'm going to say, there's a lot of people who are out there being consultants right now. And from a financial advisor position, you have to be a little selective of, do we believe what this consultant's actually
Yes.
bringing to the table? So how do you figure out, like with a partnership, of who is legit or whatnot?
If a local government's willing to support it and they've done their homework relative to take rates, I might get massacred for this. There are feasibility studies that are way too wordy, that go on way too long about stuff we don't care about, quite frankly, right? Want to sort of show me the numbers, show me what people's current speeds are. Are they willing to pay X for more speed? And kind of down to the simple nuts and bolts, right? If they've done a reasonable, broad community survey and can show that, I think the deal's doable.
Interesting.
I just come back to this though, that I feel like local governments, and it's a broad brush. In some cases it might be mayors, city council members, others. I think they have this sense that I don't want to take responsibility for this. I think this is going to get worked out by the federal government or someone else, and we don't have to figure that out locally. So we're going to hope that someone else is solving it. And I think that was reasonable in 2017 and 2018, but I just still see way too much of it right now. And so
it's about kicking the can down the road. If you're an elected official, and we talked about this on a panel earlier today, it's about, political cover, and it's about courage. And courage has to be engineered when you are in.
I did like that
government.
line. That was good.
And it's
Bob
the
is now
absolute
quoting
truth.
himself.
No, but it's the absolute truth, and you're verifying it.
This is a quote by Bob from Bob.
No, but is,
Ready, record. But the reality is that unless local officials see that there's a problem, right? I'm a big believer that fiber projects should address a community need first and foremost, and you work your way backward from that community need. So, in some communities, it's that there's massive inequities. In other communities, there's an economic development problem, like in ours.
Right.
We wanted to position ourselves for the next wave of the economy, and that's work from home. How do you do that? Ubiquitous fiber, right? So start there, work your way backwards, and then the political courage starts to come into place.
No, but Laura, what Laura was saying true, and we heard this today from when we were talking to Charlie Denny. Is that his name, from West Huntington?
From
Oh, he was,
Huntington.
from
Huntington.
West Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
the
he
city of
was-
Huntington in West Virginia.
So he was making the comment that he had gone to some rural communities. He had been invited to come to some rural communities in West Virginia that were like not near anything. And the comment had been made is, we don't have the political infrastructure to make this happen. And I think whenever you look at anybody's fiber toolkit, community toolkit, and these have been around for a long time. When I was in Virginia and on the broadband board in 2008, we put one together. And what's number one? Find your champion. I mean, find your Michael Wack from Westminster.
Yep.
Find your Charlie Denny.
Robert
from-
Wack.
Robert Wack.
Wack.
But I'm gonna
I know
challenge.
another
I know you know who he is.
Michael Wack is a lawyer, but
But Heather, I'm going to challenge this, and maybe Bob, who works in this industry a little bit more than I do, is you can have a champion, but you can have a rogue champion. And
Right.
a rogue champion can be very harmful to a project versus helpful to some degree.
No, but I think
Dating,
Well,
right?
yeah,
It's
but-
dating.
you need someone, and
you do
and
need someone,
yeah.
or like a Charlie to pull it together in West Virginia. You do need that person that's gonna
I mean,
drive the project.
look at Jen Gregory in upstate New York,
Yes.
what she
Oh,
did there
yeah.
in those 8 counties.
Yeah,
She has gotten those 8 counties together. She's gotten them energized. She's gotten them fired up. She probably has the closest relationship with the state broadband office out of any other region in the state. And they're going to be successful. They're going to move forward because, the broadband office knows them. They understand the dire needs. And that's one person organizing,
Right.
Well, and,
a machine.
and I would add a doggedly persistent champion. I mean,
Yes.
and names that come to mind might be Greg with Bozeman Fiber, right? I mean, he wasn't going to take no for an answer. He was going to figure out how to get it done. And
It's Yellowstone fiber, by the way.
Yellowstone Fiber.
Thank
excuse me. I mean,
Well,
I can
he was
name
also
other
champion of
names
Bozeman
from
Fiber.
Utopia. I mean, there had to be believers when it was hard. I mean, they were hard. It was hard when, they were the pioneers.
right.
And-
These are people that this is not the case where you're like, this is a good idea. We're going to start organizing around it. We're going to have a string of success. That's going in a bad direction.
Sex.
And sex. There's a lot of sex in these projects. I'm telling you, like people are missing out.
fiber is sexy.
It is the least sexy industry I've
It
ever
is.
been a part
Oh
of.
no. I think the
No,
dishwasher
no, no,
conventions are
no.
worse.
At least they're clean.
And this is where I don't speak.
The point is that this is a situation where you start organizing and you're going for 6 months and you're not sure if you're going to have much success, and then you find out that you have a major setback, and the question is, what do you do at that point? Because we've seen
Fine.
projects where they've really struggled, and like if these things were easy in these areas, someone would have built it already, right?
This is why Utopia does not have a documentary that's premiering in 2 days here, because we've never had any troubles of setbacks that you have to be persistent on. So, I mean, you're right? You're right that some have setbacks. And
broken
stuff.
clock.
But we even see that at the local level, like right with our project. Now, it's, I just happen to be a municipal official and a broadband industry professional. So when I got to speak quickly before you interrupt, right? So like it's like every week, like there's some other thing comes up. Oh well, we've already built it. No, it's middle mile that's passing. No, it's like whack-a-mole. Like every excuse in the book, you have to
Yep.
push back on it.
Right.
Doggedly
to-
persistent. Yeah.
Doggedly.
I love that. Doggedly.
I want to
Yes,
go.
Kim, are you,
I
are
wanna
we
go
about to
back-
have a duet or
I
something?
feel like we missed an opportunity though for a law firm that's whack, whack, and whack.
You are like, I'm a public official. I'm this. And I'm like, oh, are you?
Am I? Is that so?
I do want to ask what's going on with Yellowstone Fiber.
Yellowstone Fiber, in case you haven't been in the West this year, we've had a really brutal winter. And up in Bozeman and Gallatin County, where the Yellowstone Fiber project is being built, it has been a little bit rough when you have 18 inches of frost going into April. And you're trying to do some boring. It gets a little challenging. So we're excited that this week, I think we started doing in-home drops again, and we start doing in-home installs starting in the middle of May. So we're really excited, and we're just hoping for no more snow.
What was
up
your
in
construction
Bozeman.
schedule? When did you anticipate getting, back into the ground after the winter?
I think we were
March,
looking at
April?
like March,
Wow,
hopefully,
yeah,
and you're talking mid-May.
Yeah.
And
tough winter.
that's where, when you come into some of the challenges of these community networks, is when you anticipate for the winters to look like the past 5 winters, and then you have one of these that we've had some record snows fall and frost.
Mhm.
And I
Well,
would
let's-
think that
okay,
Laura
so-
would say, how do you build a financial model when you don't understand weather?
So weather's hard. What else is going on? Anything hopeful?
That they get me
I mean,
to work with them.
I did not ask you what's going on with Yellowstone Fiber as a gotcha. Like, I assume there's like some
No, I think
enthusiasm.
that the demand, we're seeing incredible demand there. We're excited to have a record-breaking summer. I think we're looking at hopefully putting in 2,000 installs in the next 4 or 5 months. And it's going to be some sleepless nights, some more Botox for me. I mean, there's going to be a lot to keep me looking as this orange as I am tonight there, Chris.
I don't think the Botox leads to the color, but I'm not an expert on these things.
You never know.
Here's the name of this episode: Orange is the new whack.
Any last comments, Laura?
I think there was a comment maybe Kim made about how do you build a financial model around that, and that is you plan for some disruption, right? I mean,
So,
we don't start debt service the day you start
right. And then-
digging and putting in fiber. We push that off so that you have time in case there are, so there is some planning and there is some flexibility built into that.
So
Right,
in the construction business, which is 70 to 80% of your costs, on the 100 items on your line items when you're negotiating with your construction crew, let me alert you to look for the one entitled Rock Adder. Look at Roger laughing. Rock Adder means that's
Thank you,
sort
Laura.
of the line item that is there in case the construction crew encounters something that wasn't supposed to be there, namely rock.
And especially, but most of these projects, people forget to have the construction team, at the table in the
you're
beginning
right.
to be looking at these things and evaluating these things.
But that's a hard
tweaking.
conversation, because if you're in the beginning stages, you need the construction company. But how do you know you need them if you don't know if it's getting off the ground too? It's like a whole big,
But
of
if
faith.
your
Cluster.
construction company is
But
with
this
you-
is part of the deal of any kind of large civic project, I feel like, and that's why you might authorize in a project that's expected to cost 105 million, you might authorize 120 million. You go out and you start spending the money, and then you tap into that if needed, so that the cable and telephone company can then pay a lot of money to some company that says you are a failure for tapping into the extra 15 million. That's kind of how it all comes together, I think.
this
Rock
is a very
Adder, man.
positive episode that we're having right now. Very positive.
I'm having a good time. Does anyone else want to come up? And yeah.
Angela,
So-
you're coming.
Oh,
you're
Angela's
gonna
coming
come.
up second. Mike's coming up first. Nope. Let's bring up Mike. Mike's been on the show. Mike's been on the show in the chat room.
And he is drinking a Shiner Bock.
I am.
Yep, beer.
Brewery nearby.
Right.
Yep.
Is that the Ruby
Mike-
Red grapefruit?
Mike himself has worked on
Ruby
fiber
Red,
optic and wireless
grapefruit.
projects. So a little bit too much expertise here. Just cool it a little, okay?
Yeah. Well, I live in San Francisco, and we're very pretty, but not very functional.
Yes, Ezra Klein seems to have a column about that.
Yeah, we're pretty popular, so I don't really want to beat up on our city that much. But one of the big issues we've had is executive leadership. I mean, you can have all the internal champions wanting fiber, because we have that in San Francisco. Until you have executive leadership, nothing happens in a big city. Chris, you brought this up about how big cities just can't do this.
They have not been able to. I'm going to keep any big city that wants to do it.
Well, I
LA
think-
County is doing a great job moving
Yeah.
forward at this point.
Don't you think it's because the politics in a big city are so much more cumbersome than in a small community where there's a little more degree of homogeneous?
Yeah, I think that's what Mike's getting
Yeah.
to.
I think
Yeah,
one of the
no,
issues
I
we also
get it.
have is lobbyists. You know, our last attempt at fiber was ended by one of our board supervisors saying, "There's something else that's going to replace it. It's 5G,"
Jeez.
and that's how we ended our last attempt at city fiber.
Yeah, and Starlink is next, right?
Actually, my question was, what's going to happen when the ACP funding goes away?
Yeah,
It
so
seems to me that when you talk about like how
It's not going away. I mean, come on.
I mean, earlier
Oh
today
my
we saw
God,
the
that's-
presentation from
Yeah.
Brownsville, right, with BTX Fiber, and this is an exciting project that I think is terrific. Far Texas built this network,
Right.
and if Congress fails to put more money into the ACP, these projects are going to have very big challenges because these are cities where they are expecting, I would say, half of their revenues, or I mean, I'm saying this, I don't know, 40-50% of their revenues might be coming from ACP due to the poverty in those areas.
Can we make a poll of who thinks ACP will be refunded on this panel and who
Who
won't?
thinks that, let's put it this way, who thinks ACP will be funded before it runs out of money? So this would be before the last check is written,
I
there's
feel
more
like
money
there
that goes in the
might be
account.
5 cents in the account, but I think it's
I
gonna
know.
get, yeah.
Okay. So no one else is raising their hands here. Who thinks there's going to be a significant gap of, let's say, more than 3 months where there's no money in ACP and then it's refunded?
Oh.
Okay, more hands there. Who thinks it's gone and we're just not going to get more money into the ACP?
Sean, you can't vote twice.
So
I mean,
so
we're
the
dealing
majority of
with a
people in the room.
Congress that wants to let chip lapse. Come on, guys. Let's be realistic.
No.
Kids are going to die from starvation. You think they're going to refund ACP?
I think that the big cable and telephone companies
well,
are going to put
there.
in a big effort. But I think it's also going to be such a large amount of money because it's going to be a multi-year refund. I think you're going to be looking at a bill that's between 20, 30, 40 billion dollars. And people are going to freak out. There's going to be a one-time refund of that. And then I don't think it's going to be refunded after
Do you
that.
think, let me ask you this, do you think the Lifeline and the ACP will work in conjunction? How long do you think they're gonna both be? in
Yeah,
play?
this really depends. I mean, I have about this much faith that there's squeezing my fingers together as hard as I possibly can that this FCC will deal with the Lifeline reform and the contribution reform. So I think there's a path there, but I do not see anyone that wants to like make the hard decisions to make this happen.
And
So
thank God we have such a functional FCC. And something we were talking about earlier today, right? Whether it was Gigi Sohn or anyone in that position, right? The large incumbents don't want a functional FCC.
Yeah.
It could have been anyone.
yeah. So thank you, Mike. We have, for people that want to track this, acpdashboard.com. We put it as running out as early as August or September, as late as August or September next year. But if we are successful with the new efforts to sign new people up, that will happen much sooner than
That's
that.
what's so baffling to me is that we're putting more efforts for people to sign up, but we have no pathway forward if it's going to be refunded. Okay, Angela, the most stylish person.
Angela,
in this
Another
room.
person has been on the show in the past. Welcome back. Also a veteran of our first live show in an event.
Yes, which I have to say, big difference between that live show and this live show. I believe we were in a shed with gravel underfoot. So the difference between what Broadband has and what Digital Equity Space has, I'm gonna need some sponsors. Can I just
Okay, but that was like,
say?
no offense to everybody in this room, it was a more hipper location than we are right now.
It was a wonderful ice house, the friendly spot on San Antonio. It was wonderful, and was not well mic'd for the crowd. It was an incredibly hard room to mic, so almost no one could hear us. So,
So
but
this is lovely.
it was fun. Yeah.
This is lovely.
Welcome
I'm
back.
Angela Seifer, National Digital Inclusion Alliance. Hi.
So you wanted to come up because we're talking about this. I
We're
also
talking about ACP.
yes.
Yeah. So I think I don't know if we're gonna get it, but we need ACP and we need Lifeline because there's lots of folks still using Lifeline for phone service. and
Mobile phone service.
Mobile phone service, and a few folks still have it on. there,
Sure.
Right. Like folks need both. we all have phone and home service. I
Right. There's a
believe
broken
probably-
market in both, and so both are unreasonably
There's a broken
unacceptable.
market
Do you
in
think we
both,
should
and need
clarify 'em?
subsidies
Like
for both.
what? Like so? Could we like say that Lifeline was for more phone
Was
service?
for phone. We
Yeah.
could possibly, right? I think the future has to be getting that short-term money to keep ACP going, and then we have to, and I know this is very scary, we have to figure out USF, like
Universal Service
long-term
Fund.
Universal Service Fund. We have to figure out how we use Universal Service Fund, and have enough money coming into it.
Let me ask the
Where's the money
question: What do
come
you? How do you
from?
think it's going to get funded as like traditional phone service? It dies away.
Wait, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what your question is.
So
Say it
you,
again.
you see,
No one
like,
knows.
Yeah, like no one knows. But you're
I
saying,
believe in you, Kim.
I believe in me. So you're seeing it, the people are ditching traditional phone service, which is how USF is funded, right? So where are we going to get the funding to continue at USF?
Facebook.
Maybe Facebook. I think a logical, and you all can not fund net inclusion when I say broadband service.
Well, that's Facebook.
No, it's two
No,
different
that's
things.
not-
One is a tax on broadband service, which would be appropriate in that we all would be then contributing to make sure that everyone can get it. That's how the phone service worked, right? That's how we made sure that everyone had phone service. Was businesses and people in urban areas paid more, and people in rural areas got affordable service. The second option would be to tax like some kind of online advertising or something that would go after Google and Facebook
Right,
and
right,
others.
Right, but we need Congress to do that one. The FCC could potentially, if we
Do the
had
broadband.
5 commissioners, could figure it out with broadband.
Yes. And additionally, I'll just note that as Carl Bodie would say, if he was here, Congress is interested in talking a tough game about the tech companies and talking about how we have to punish TikTok while not actually doing anything to protect any of our privacy or actually resolve any of the massive problems that we have with those big companies.
Okay, what was your name, sir? What was your name?
Mike.
Mike. So like Mike made it a perfectly clear explanation. It can look good, but it doesn't have to be functional. And I think that's what you're talking about. The FCC can look good.
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily have to be
I'm
functional.
not sure they even look good right now.
Okay, fair enough.
No, they
Angela.
look gone. I mean, if you asked me to draw a picture of the FCC, it would be like the classic picture of the cow eating grass. You know, familiar with this? The cow eating grass? Where's the...
What kind of art do you
the cow eating grass. The question is where's the grass? The cow ate it. Where's the cow? The cow left with no grass. Why would it stick around? It's a piece of white paper.
I've heard all
That's
of
that's the
this.
FCC. That's my picture of the FCC right now. It's
That's a
four
real think
ghosts.
piece there.
I'm still a little bit lost on
Fourth
this
grade
one.
humor. Come on. Come
Okay,
on.
Okay. I'll just
Okay, I want to
stop.
know. I want to know.
Cow eating grass. Mixed media.
I thought that was going to go over better than it did. I'm hoping that someone in the chat in 5
Chris
seconds is going to be
smoking
like,
grass.
yes, cow eating grass. Come on, people. Angela,
Yes, sir.
tomorrow we're talking about digital equity more
We are.
broadly.
Yeah. No, and I'm very excited about that. In the digital equity space, broadband is the actual service itself is a piece of things, but not always. Right. So when we talk digital equity, it's that affordable access to the internet, the devices, the digital skills, the tech support. And when you all were talking up here about the champions, one of the things I was thinking about is that in a lower income community, who's the champion? Because to be a champion, you have to have some time and some resources to be a champion.
Yeah, how did Wanda do it? So, I mean, Wanda is like one of your superstars. She's on your board.
I actually think so. Wanda's in Cleveland. I actually think it was the attention on it. I don't think it was. I think Wanda's doing her thing. Wanda's teaching digital skills, and everybody loves Wanda, and she brings folks together. I don't think she was harassing AT&T to come. I think it was the attention that NDIA and others brought on Wanda's community that brought fiber to Wanda's.
Can I ask Angela a question, Chris? Okay.
Please, I'm
Angela.
excited.
So I think that we see that broadband and digital inclusion are very much tied, right? But I feel like we all are in separate lanes of the interstate sometimes. So how can we work together better as an industry to make sure that broadband and digital inclusion can kind of meet in the middle? Because our ultimate goal is the same.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways. One is that space around building champions and building coalitions. So coalitions, NDIA has been tracking them. We haven't publicized it yet, but we have 86 digital equity coalitions that we are aware of in the United States. That's crazy. Prior to the pandemic, it was about a dozen. So they are really, so this was kind of the issue you all were bringing up earlier, is like, well, are people really paying attention to some of this stuff? In some places, they really are. And
These are
they're
like
gathering
metro-wide
together.
typically.
Some of them are county-wide, some of them are multi-county, some are in rural areas now. Like that's part of the expansion. A few are even statewide, which is exciting. But having those places where folks can come together and have these conversations, so it's not one champion, it's a whole coalition that's moving it forward. And in some of the more urban spaces, per the conversation about whether or not there are urban cities that will be able to figure out a new solution themselves, owning it or managing it or whatever. In some of those places, the conversation is we need a coalition that can help move the conversation forward, because just as you were also talking about, people know they don't understand it, don't understand the tech, don't understand, they just want it to work. They just want it to work. And so if we have more folks who do understand it, then it's not one champion, it's a whole group of champions.
Okay, we have a couple minutes left. Talk me off the ledge. And I'm curious if Heather has a response to this too, because you've been tracking this industry for a long time. The
Are
federal,
you saying she's a little bit older?
I am not saying that.
Chris is being very careful not to get into the ages and stuff tonight. Okay, what's
Specifically tonight.
okay, let's hear it.
So I have a hard time encouraging my staff to participate in the digital discrimination work the FCC is doing, because I don't think the FCC is going to do anything on it. I might be overstating my position here a little bit, but I'm curious, Angela and Heather in particular, but also then Bob, not from Kim, thoughts about this, because I just have no faith the FCC is going to do anything that matters.
So here's, I think you're right, but here's what does matter is that we have to set it up to be able to fight again. So what can we set up now? Things like, how are they collecting data? What data will they make available? If we can get the structure set up for the data collection, whether it's from companies or from the public, that's what we can use later to come back and fight again.
So I appreciate Angela's analytics and approach to this, because basically I think this is a fight like so many others today that is going to be at the local level. And I mean, you're lucky if you get a statewide effort, but it's going to be almost door to door fighting on all of this stuff. Just like it's going to be community to community on who goes for the BEAD money, it's going to be door to door on digital equity, community by community. And I agree that we have to collect the data at the FCC level and see what they're doing and how it matters. But I think in terms of impact, it's the community by community.
And that's the coalitions. That's what's happening right now at the local level. But I think the data collection is so that we can go back to the FCC in whatever amount of time, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, and fight this again at the FCC level.
I mean, we're almost into a community organizing effort.
Yes.
You know, I'm no digital equity expert, but one question that I've always wondered is the digital equity movement. There's a lot of people who are really well intended, but they're really having a hard time moving the conversation, engaging their communities, moving everything forward. And I guess, Angela, what are some examples that you've seen in your work
In 30 seconds.
in 30 seconds that are really innovative, where people are having some impact? Because I'm really curious about those stories.
Now she has 15. Shut up, Bob.
So there's lots. Let me just say digitalinclusion.org is our website. Join the community, and afterwards Bob will sit and talk about all the things.
Have you considered regional events? You have a wonderful national event. We just had it recently. I'm just
why
curious.
was it warmer in what was that, February
San Antonio.
in San Antonio than it is in May in
So
Houston?
the reason for the regional, which we've considered, but it's always money, right? Like, can
Sure.
we figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't break our bank?
Yeah.
You've already asked for money earlier in this
I'm gonna
podcast.
keep asking for money,
Yeah.
Kim.
No, I mean, let's as we're wrapping up here, like, I think it's worth noting. I mean, at this point, the country has spent many tens of billions, approaching $100 billion inefficiently. We are now spending many tens of billions of dollars, hopefully slightly more efficiently. And we've allocated all of $3 or $4 billion to digital equity. I mean, if you include the BTOP money, maybe less than $5 billion, but approaching $5 billion for this problem, which is a greater problem in terms of the number of people involved than the infrastructure problem.
we get very excited about our 2.75 billion, and we talk about it as being historic, but I think it's actually the beginning, and we have to keep figuring out how to fund this because technology is going to keep changing. So we're going to have to keep figuring out how to teach people how to use the internet.
Yeah, we just did a report that is available on our websites on ILSR.org as well as communitynets.org about telehealth. And we looked at 10 rural counties and the amount of money that could be saved from modest telehealth interventions if people had access. And we did this event with Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative, and they had on people who are talking about their experiences with telehealth. And the amount of money that we are wasting right now because we haven't made basic investments in infrastructure, but then on top of that, the digital equity to make sure people have the devices, the confidence, the training to be able to use them effectively and affordable connections, it's remarkable. And so this is not one of those things where it's like, oh, we freed up $2.75 billion. It's more that we made a small investment that is probably going to result in tens of billions of dollars of benefits from people being more productive and that sort of a thing. And that's what I think, just to refuse to end the show, that's where I just feel like this is the conversation we were sort of talking about earlier, the conversation that needs to happen. People don't appreciate the way this money works, in that this is not like an investment where, it's obvious to tell what the returns are. But there are so many benefits that come out of this that are hard to
Like
measure.
a mustard seed.
Is that
Mustard seed.
do those
A tiny mustard seed. Oh, you guys are.
You're gonna have to
the
tell
cow
me.
Right.
did the
Thank
cow did the
you.
cow
Yeah,
eat the
one
mustard
person in
seed?
the room. One person in the room who understands this
So-
reference.
No, Roger knows what I'm talking about. The tiny mustard seed grows into an entire enormous plant.
I would just like to stop here. Travis and Doug, that was my form of
They didn't
Chris
comment
on
at
a-
all. I'm
on a rant.
whatever. I mean,
That was your mild rant. They can get you a
Yeah.
bigger rant.
Yeah.
So that was-
Yeah.
Great Poupon over here in the Rolls Royce, you know.
In the fancy orange scarf.
In the fancy orange scarf, back from her fancy
I
family
know
vacation.
what a mustard seed does.
she was from
Have you ever
Italia.
planted a mustard
Are you
seed,
talking
Heather?
in code?
Okay.
Oh.
All right. So I want to do a couple of thanks here. I want to thank Heather. Thanks for coming on. I want to thank
Thank you.
Bob and Kim. Thank you for welcoming me into the studio that Harrison Edwards has set up, for being welcomed here at the AAPB, American Association of Public Broadband reception to do this event. I want to thank Utopia Fiber for making this happen. Thank you.
You're welcome, Chris. And I really like that you used your I feel words. I think you've made real progress.
Do you feel like it was a lot of emotion behind that?
I feel it was an impassioned display of gratitude.
I want to
Chris.
thank Angela for jumping up here. I want to thank Mike. I want to thank Laura. I want to thank everyone who was Roger, definitely, for being the first one to break the seal. Thank you.
Can I make one thanks too? I'd like to thank Julia Emmerich, our
Yes.
Harrison Edwards VP of Operations, who basically pulled all this together in very short order. Thank you, Julia.
And Rye behind the scenes, making it happen. James behind the camera, making it happen. And Angela, who's not in the room, for getting the wine for Heather, really helped out. Thank you all. We are going to be back I think it might be next Friday. But we'll be back sometime soon for another episode of Connect This.